said to be the most haunted hotel in America by the likes of ghost hunters and ghost adventures. But who haunts the Crescent Hotel in Eureka Springs, as there are hundreds of tales of the paranormal going back more than 120 years. Built in 1886 as a luxury hotel, it was while construction was taking place that the first tragic event occurred. An Irish stonemason, who staff have come to call Michael, was working on the roof one day when he suddenly lost his balance and fell to the ground below. Very early in the hotel's life, the ghost of this man has been witnessed in room 218, with guests having seen his hands grabbing at them through a mirror and doors opening and then slamming shut. But when people try to open the door again after this, it refuses to budge. Worst thing though is that the man's final screams are heard coming from the ceiling area of this room as he plummets to his death over and over again. In 1908, the hotel was sold on and it became the Crescent College and Conservatory for Young Women, but sadly it closed its doors after just 16 years of business. Then, in 1937, a man called Norman Baker decided to turn it into the Baker Cancer Hospital. He was truly a horrible man who not only lied and said that he was a doctor when he had no medical training whatsoever, but that he had an amazing cure for cancer. This man was so heartless that in his time of operation, he managed to defraud his desperate patients and their families out of millions of dollars. Many people have witnessed his ghostly apparition in the lobby of the hotel, described as wearing a purple shirt and white linen suit. Scary thing is, though, that if you look at photographs of the man from years back, he is seen wearing similar attire. One of Baker's patients still lingers to this day and is called Theodora. Seen by many over the years outside room 419, she is said to regularly converse with housekeeping staff. She will introduce herself as a cancer patient of Dr. Baker's, and after courtesies are exchanged, will suddenly disappear. There are also reports of her fumbling with her keys outside the room and tidying up after guests who have stayed in room 419 too. Now, one area which you would expect to be busy is the morgue, from the time of it being a hospital. Described as being a place not for the faint of heart, people have become lightheaded, felt chills and complained of an uneasy stomach. Are they sensing the ghostly atmosphere of the place? Or maybe they're experiencing the side effects of the so-called cure. And while talking about the so-called cure, in 2019, 5 News reported a shocking discovery that took place during construction of a sporting club nearby. As the workers were digging the ground, hundreds of glass bottles were unearthed that were said to contain a mysterious concoction, as well as medical specimens. Had Norman Baker been hiding away the evidence of his crimes years before? After this discovery, paranormal researcher Larry Flaxman and surgical pathologist Dr. Charles Matthew Quick with UAMS studied the samples and found them to be human tissue from Baker's patients. The morgue is a creepy as hell area. People have seen the dark figure of a man here, with reports of visitors being touched or grabbed at. But this is not the only ghostly encounter had in the morgue. The spirit of a nurse has been seen pushing a gurney, with the sound of squeaking and rattling heard along the hallways. To this day, you can still see the autopsy table and walk-in freezer of the old morgue, just in case you weren't creeped out enough. Also, right next door to the morgue is where the laundry room is, and one evening, a maintenance guy witnessed all the washers and dryers turn on their own, all at once. While the Crescent may be serving the public as a hotel and spa again, they also do ghostly tours for the public at night, and these draw many people to the establishment. In 2021, a full-body apparition was captured in the crystal dining room, sitting at a table near the window. The interesting thing to note here is that the figure of a man in Victorian clothing has been seen staring out of the window by many people over the years and heard saying, "I saw the most beautiful woman here last night and I am waiting for her to return." So is this hard proof that ghosts exist? I wonder if he ever got to see her again or if something happened to keep them apart. Just like in the morgue, the dining room is wild with ghosts. One morning, while staff were arriving to set up for the day, they entered the room to find everything in its place except for the menus. They had been thrown all over the room. And while employees state that the ghosts can be quite playful, can you imagine coming into work one Christmas only to discover that the mischievous entities had moved the Christmas tree and gifts from one room to another, even positioning chairs in a circle facing the tree? One evening during a shift, a waitress at the restaurant just so happened to look up at the mirror that stands between the dining room doors and the kitchen and couldn't believe her eyes. Reflected back at her was a man and woman in Victorian clothing facing each other at a wedding. Suddenly, the groom slowly turned his head to face the stunned waitress and actually made eye contact with her before the wedding party faded away to nothing. As you can imagine, the woman was left quite disturbed by this experience and quit her job shortly after. Would you find this alarming, do you think? Or would you try to take it all in your stride? I'm not sure how I'd feel about it, to be honest. In the early hours of one morning, an employee was walking by the dining room and saw men and women dancing around the room as if at a party, even though the room was dark and closed to the public. Who were they? Sadly, nobody seems to know, but again, their clothing was old-fashioned, and so it seems to have been another moment captured in time. But while the restaurant might seem active, the kitchen can be pretty lively too. Steve Garrison, who is a cook at the hotel, has had his own encounters. One morning while he was slicing vegetables, something caught his eye. He looked up to see a little boy with pop bottle glasses, dressed in Victorian clothing, skipping and playing around in the kitchen. Who the boy was, no one seems to know. On another occasion, Steve turned on the lights to the kitchen, only to have pots and pans flying off their hooks. But if this kind of thing can happen during the day and seen by staff and guests, what other things are witnessed on the ghost tours? Well, strap yourself in, as it just gets creepier, dissectors. There is a specific spot on the 3rd floor where the hotel connects to an annex that was built onto the property during the time of it being a hospital that many believe to be a portal to the other side. Guests over the years have suddenly grown quite faint, turning pale, and some falling against the wall, passing out for a short while. It's always in the same spot and seems to happen in spurts, with incidents occurring many times over weeks or even months, and then nothing for ages. On another occasion, a guide was talking to a couple who had been staying at the hotel for a couple of days and was told a disturbing experience that they had had. They were staying on the 1st floor near the governor's suite when they both decided to just sleep with a thin sheet covering them. In the middle of the night, the husband awoke to find himself boiling hot and sweating profusely, as they had both been tucked in with a comforter while they'd slept. Throwing the covers off and finally getting back to sleep, he awoke again, having been re-tucked in. On another occasion, a couple who was staying in room 221 had a strange encounter with the ghost of a gentleman. When they exited the elevator on the 2nd floor, they came across a man dressed in all black period clothing. The gentleman smiled and asked if they needed any help getting to their room, which they accepted, thinking the man worked at the Crescent Hotel. Well, he led them to their room and opened the door for them, but as they entered, the man stayed outside, smiling at them and tilting his head from side to side in a strange way. Thinking that he might be waiting for a tip, they turned around to hand the guy some cash, only to discover he'd gone in the blink of an eye and was nowhere to be seen down the corridor. But this story gets stranger. You see, they stayed in their room to relax after their journey that day, only leaving in the early evening to grab food and drinks. When they returned later, their key wouldn't work, so they went to the front desk thinking there was a problem. Oh, there was a problem, all right. The key they had been given was for room 321, not 221. The couple described the man to the member of staff and were told no one works there currently that fits that description. So who was the man? Was he an old porter? And how did he get the room open with the wrong key? Well, I don't know about you dissectors, but I think I would find that very eerie. Have you ever experienced anything like that yourself? Or have you stayed at the Crescent Hotel and have a story to share? If you do, please let me know in the comments below. The Crescent Hotel is certainly a very interesting place with so many paranormal stories associated with it, as well as the sinister Norman Baker. I so want to say Norman Bates every time I say his name. It really does seem to earn the title of most haunted hotel in America, don't you agree? Or is there some place that you think is even more haunted? If so, let me know and maybe we can do an episode on this location in the future. Until next time, dissectors, as always, stay safe out there.